Hi, in today's strategy we're going to be looking at using speed graphs to find the strongest runners in a race. Okay, so I'm going to open the next race, which is the 2:30 at Uttoxeter. So here we go, I'm going to open this race and wait for that to open a second. Okay, so we've got this race here. It's a novice hurdle, predicted race pace slow, hurdle turf, class 4, good ground, 2 miles, 3 furlongs. Okay, so in order to open the speed graphs, we click on this icon over here, and that will open our speed graphs in a different tab for us, or in a new window, whatever. I've got a bit of a slow internet connection today, so it's taking a little bit longer than normal to load the pages, but they will appear. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to narrow this field down. So I'm going to sort by Betfair odds. I'm going to try and narrow it down very quickly. That means taking out any horse with odds higher than 29 to 1 or 30 decimal. And we can see we've got 4 here that meet this criteria. We've got My Space Not Yours, Balagan, Inexorable, and St. Jude. So, Inexorable, Balagan, St. Jude, and the other one was My Space Not Yours. Okay, so they are all have too high odds for me to want to bet on. So that's why they're gone. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, this is obviously your graph that you see when it's opened. We see the points for each race a horse has been in, and that point is the speed figure. The top line and the bottom line show us between what levels of speed rating we expect the horse would have achieved with a 95% confidence level. So a rating is only ever an estimate. We calculate an error for our speed rating, an error within that estimate. So we can then calculate what the range would be with 95% confidence. So we know with 95% confidence that the horse would have got a speed rating between these 2 points, but it's most likely to have been the speed rating that we gave it. The more data we have, the smaller that level is. The less data, or the less sure we can be of it, then the bigger it is. And that's why you can see some of the horses have a higher range and some of them have a lower range. So the first thing that I'm going to do is we can also, I should also mention, we can zoom in as well. So we can zoom into different areas of the grass like this if we want to see them, and we can obviously zoom in horizontally along the time like this too. But I'm going to leave it for the moment at max. If you don't want to see the confidence levels, we can just hide them very quickly. We can also hide the sidebar on the right, but we're going to be using this sidebar today. So what we'll see next to each horse is an average speed figure for the horse, and that average speed figure is based on all the points we can see on the graph. So when we apply a filter in a minute, a dynamic filter, these numbers will change because it's only taking into account the conditions that we've set in that dynamic filter. But just raw average figures, Diodorus looks to be the fastest in this race. Don't forget, this race is a 2 mile, 3 furlong race. So we're going to start by applying a dynamic filter. And this race is a novice hurdle race on good ground. So just going to put hurdle turf, good ground, and I like to go good to soft, good to firm. I like to just do the other sides of good ground as well. I also like to do distance. Now, if you're not sure, our distance in the filters currently works in yards. We are looking at following requests. We're looking at converting this so you can put it in miles, furlongs, or yards, or any combination of each. But at the moment we work in yards, and that's because that is the smallest value in distance that we have in racing. We have miles, and then furlongs, and then yards. If you're not sure how far a 2 mile, 3 furlong race is in yards, and I wouldn't blame you because I don't know off the top of my head either, we just come over to Google and we type in 2 miles in yards, and that will just tell us exactly what it is. So it's 3,500 yards. So 3,500 yards, and we can do the same for furlongs as well. So we put furlongs in as well, and it's 1,500. So we've got 2,500 plus 1,500. So we've got about 4,000 yards here. So let's just take it from roughly 3,500 to 4,500. So we're giving it a few hundred yards either side of that level. And then we just apply this filter. And what this will do is it will apply this filter to the races. So we'll only see on the graph horses with that. So we can see here we've got escapability here running through, and put those confidence lines. Sorry, back on. I want to be able to see them. Here we've got Cotswold Prince, and down here we have, I need to zoom in I think for that horse. There we go, down here, very small confidence, Inexorable. Okay, so let me just zoom back out there. So we can see here we've got Cotswold Prince, we've got Escapability, who looks very strong over the conditions in comparison, and then we've got Inexorable down here, much lower. So based on fairly specific conditions, and obviously we can get even more specific. If the horses have a lot of races, obviously they won't, this is a novice, but if they've got a lot of races, we can filter by classification, by course, number of runners, class, prize money, and age. So there's a lot of things that we can filter by. So you can get as specific as you want. I tend to prefer to start very specific, and then I gradually move backwards to see how it changes the less specific we get, and that gives an idea of who's going to be strongest under very specific conditions, and then who might be strong or who has been strong under similar conditions, gradually getting less and less similar. So it just builds up a bit of a picture. 2:30. Oh, we've got plenty of time before this race. That's fine. So, so that's how we go about with this race. So, based on quite specific conditions, we can see Cotswold Prince definitely looks to be the strongest. This race was back in March. Horse got 153 speed figure, and we were very confident in that speed figure. Class 3, 3,500, and down here, just before that, 3 months before that, 111 at Taunton, good to soft as well, and it was good there. And the ground, remember, today was good, so I actually performed better on good ground. Down here we've got Inexorable. When we hover over these, you can see speed figure of 49, hurdle turf, good to soft, and Doncaster, class 4. Moving over to the side a bit, Cotswold Prince, hurdle turf, good, market raisin. So what we can see here is that actually if Escapability performed more at a level where it did back in December, then actually Cotswold Prince has the chance to compete with this horse. But if it performs as it did in March, then Cotswold Prince is probably going to struggle to catch it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just the ground condition out, and I'm doing that because this is quite a long race, so I want to see if other horses have raced over a similar length. So let's just see that. So we've got horses tall, and now we can see back up here, Escapability is still, just if we're looking at hurdle turf and similar distances, still very strong. We got an extra race in as well for this horse in January, which shows that actually it's been a bit more consistent than it looked previously, and this is why it's important to step back a little bit and have a look. So this horse has been actually more consistent, makes it less likely that Cotswold Prince is going to catch. The ground condition there was soft, so it seems to like soft and good ground without too much of an impact. We've got down here Diodorus has dropped in, and now Diodorus is on soft ground and heavy ground, so possibly prefers softer ground to heavy ground. We've got down here, you see Inexorable now is looking less and less likely to be able to compete. We can just see that very quickly. St. Jude as well. So again, it's still looking like Escapability is going to be the strongest here, with Diodorus possible, but probably preferring softer ground. We would need to see how it performs over firmer ground. And Cotswold Prince still a threat if improving. So now I'm going to come back into the filter again. I'm going to put our ground conditions back on, but this time I'm going to remove distance. Come in and have another look, see if it changes the picture. Doesn't really change it very much. It's very similar to the picture we saw with distance and ground conditions, except Friends Don't Ask has dropped in here as well, but over a much longer distance. So and came forth. So that doesn't really tell us much. So now we're going to take off everything except for the race type and see what we can get on the graph. So again, this gives us a bit of a bigger picture again. And we can see here that it's still looking very similar. We've got Inexorable looking a bit better, more improvement because we've just had this, I think it was this race here, added in here, soft, over soft ground as well. So on soft ground this time, and a much longer distance. Well, a bit longer. This is longer distance as well here. For Friends Don't Ask. Everything else is looking very similar to what we've already seen. So it's still looking like Escapability is the one to beat. Diodorus could have an edge, but definitely prefers or looks to prefer softer ground. And Cotswold Prince, if continuing to improve, could do well. Now that was the last filter, so I'm just going to reset the whole graph. It looks a lot busier, so that tells us immediately that a lot of these runners have been running on flat ground condition. Okay, so if we look at flat turf only, because they're not in hurdles, so and obviously that makes sense. It's a novice race, so that all makes sense. So how are we looking in flat racing? Well, quite simply, again, we've got Diodorus now actually looking very, very strong in flat racing. And let's put in all of our conditions again, and we had 3,500. And now you don't need to do this unless you're looking at kind of a novice race where horses are just moving in, so they've got limited history. So Diodorus up here, not much to tell us there. Now anyone, let's take, let's take we'll do it exactly the same way as we did before. So let's take the ground conditions out. Okay, still not much there. So let's put those ground conditions back in. And take out the distance instead. Okay. Got a little bit more to work with here. So just on ground conditions, good ground conditions, we can see here Diodorus looks strong, as does Escapability. On flat, they both perform well. We've got Punkawala here, not so great, couldn't compete. So again, that probably removes Punkawala from consideration, but possibly pushes Diodorus in a little bit more, perform well on the flat. However, Diodorus was the horse. Hang on, let me double check that. I was going to say Diodorus was the horse who did not perform well. No, Diodorus was the horse. Where am I? Take all the conditions off, just coming back to the previous hurdle turf filter. Yes, Diodorus was the horse here, that's what I thought, who hasn't performed as well on hurdle turf on good ground, but it could just be this horse hasn't run on good ground yet. And we'll check that in a minute. That's why I wanted to just bring that back up to show you quickly there. Okay, so again, coming back to where we were, no, this is a novice race, we've got flat races. It's still looking inexorable and Diodorus to be the strongest. So let's just take all of these ground conditions out. Again, just on flat turf alone, it looks exactly the same. We've got Diodorus here looking strong and Escapability. So we're looking at the moment, let's reset this totally again. And we just want to check now any others in here that look particularly good. Punkwala is this green one in the middle here. You can see this horse here, jumping up, jumping down, jumping up. A bit volatile, not sure we would want to really go with it, and nothing to stand out under similar race conditions. We've got Cotswold Prince here, whose last race we saw decline. You can see decline down here. It's leveled up a bit into here. And that's how that goes. And Friends Don't Ask coming down here. So there isn't anything really. It looks like it's going to be between Diodorus and Escapability. So let's just jump back over here. It looks like it's going to be, and here they are as it happens at the top. So Diodorus and Escapability. As it happens, these two look to be the strongest in the race from a market perspective. And now we wanted to have a quick look at Diodorus's form just to see how it had performed. And we can see here we got a hurdle race, and it has won a hurdle race, but on heavy. That was the hurdle race we found on heavy, hurdle race on soft, and it hasn't actually run yet on good ground condition, but it has performed well on the flat on good ground condition, which would indicate possibly this horse can perform well on good ground condition on the flat. So that's also very good to know. 2 miles 3 furlong. Notice, sorry, this race is also longer by 2 furlongs than its other races. So, however, with the ground condition being better, that shouldn't necessarily be a problem. Coming back to Escapability, come down here, and we can see here. I like to have a look in the horse's past form just to see where we're at. So again, escapability on good ground, beaten 2.75 lengths here. So again, escapability has a longer race today than it's used to. So they're both going into longer races. The fact that escapability hasn't performed so well over hurdles at this distance on soft ground as Diodorus means that possibly Diodorus actually might have the edge with that distance. Carrying 10, 12 there, we'll see that they're both carrying here 11, and Diodorus is actually carrying more weight, and that will be because of that performance issue there. So that's how it's looking. Escapability, if we just want to have a quick look at some other factors as well, which is always a good idea. We have Diodorus being the highest chance of winning, and that would tie into what we were just saying, that Diodorus has actually performed better over soft ground at 2 miles than escapability has over good ground. So we are expecting Diodorus to perform better today because we know the horse likes good ground because it's done it well on flat. And if that translates into this hurdle race, he could definitely beat escapability. And that backs it up. But escapability is not particularly far behind there in the probability. Either. Okay. Escapability has been ranked 1 for our 5.278. And in terms of speed, a good race out of the last 10. We've got 6 good races for Diodorus, 5. So there's much of a muchness here. Escapability does have a much higher PFP score though. So now what do we do? We know that this race is likely to be between Diodorus or escapability, and we got most of that off the speed graphs. And then we just came over and checked it on their own form to see how it goes. And by doing that, we saw that Diodorus has actually performed, because Diodorus has performed well on flat ground, that's good, and as long as that translates into hurdle, and liking the good ground in hurdle, so the jumps aren't causing an issue for it jumping on good ground, then this horse may well have the edge because it's run very fast over soft and heavy ground with hurdles, so the extra leap up 3 furlongs in distance that they're both facing today may actually go in favour of Diodorus. But escapability definitely is in for a chance. So now let's just jump over to the market and see what we've got here. Because now we know it's between these two with possibly a slight edge for Diodorus. We want to determine how to bet. So the market's saying escapability is the one. And that's not surprising. We saw the reasons for that why on the speed graph. Now if we were going to Dutch these two horses, there is a Dutching feature that we have here in Betfair. We just click on this stake icon here, where we've got our selections on, and we put our total stake in, and you can see it splits it between the two. So if we were going to Dutch bet this, we'd make about £10 on each to a £25 stake, so that's about a 40% return. We could of course Dutch them, we could just choose one of them to win. If we come over to the place market, we can see that they're both pretty low here to place. So is it worth doing an 80-20? Well, let's take a look. If we were to do say £8, it's easier to work it out to a £10 stake. £8 on a Diodorus to place. If it placed only, we would get £2.51 back, and we would be spending £2 80-20 bet. So 80% of the stake goes on the place, 20% goes on the win. So in this example, it would be a £10 bet. So we make £2.50 on it if it was to place only, minus a £2 loss. So that would be a 50p profit on a £10 bet, which is about 5%. That's about as low as I would want to go. For escapability, if we do the same thing, we can see that actually we would pretty much only break even if this horse was to place and not win. We could go for the 2 places, obviously, and that would bump that up significantly, or the 4 places would make it not worthwhile unless we were just betting on them to place. And the chances are both these horses are going to place in the top 4, so actually you could be essentially what they call buying money. There is obviously still a risk involved when you're doing that, but you get very low odds, and the chances are very, very high that these 2 horses are going to place. AVB, we've got escapability versus Diodorus, and so actually here we could potentially go with Diodorus on the side. So at the moment it's looking like really either we want to do a win, or we've got a reverse forecast as well. 4 and 1, escapability is 4, Diodorus is 1. So if we have a 1 and 4, that's 3.35 for the reverse forecast to bet them to come in first and second in any order. So it's good to look at all the bets that are available. Now what I'm actually going to do quickly, because we've got some time till this race, so I'm just going to quickly do one last test. I'm just going to run the Monte Carlo simulator here. So this simulator, I'm just going to run it a standard race card just to see how it brings it out. Does it think it's Diodorus is going to have the edge over escapability or not? And this is just going to help me determine how to structure the bet, because at the moment we're looking at either I'm probably going to want the Dutch bet, or possibly I'm going to want both bet to place. There is a small margin for the reverse forecast, but I think it could go either way, so I'm not sure that's a particularly good bet in this particular race. So either place or a Dutch bet is going to be the ones I'm going to go for. There's no point in doing the 80-20, the profit margins aren't really there, certainly not with two horses. If I particularly fancied one over the other, then it would make sense, but it would still be marginal with that kind of profit. Okay, so I think what we're going to see here is that the simulator is going to say that Diodorus is looking to be stronger than escapability as well. Let's just open that so we can sort it in order of best performing. Okay, so yeah, it is. It's saying that Diodorus is slightly better than escapability, and then there's a fairly big jump down. Okay, so coming back over here, so that just is an extra confirmation. So it's looking like Diodorus has the best odds. I think probably here the Dutch bet is going to be the one to go for. If I was going to do an 80-20, Diodorus would be the one I would do it on. And you can see here, we've already been here, but the place odds on Diodorus are just a bit low. They don't really match up with the kind of profit I would want to do that. So I'd rather do the Dutch bet on both of them, like this. And then we put that stake in there, and we do that. And we can see here we're making around about, 40% if one of them win. Place those bets in there, and not quite matched yet at 3.3, but hopefully it will be matched shortly. So that's how we can use the speed graphs to analyze a race, to find the best selections, and we can do this on any race because we can use that dynamic filter to filter them right down into the specific race conditions that we're looking for. If you've got any questions on this strategy, please do head over to the forum and post them. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next strategy. Bye for now.